Apple class action settlement could mean more money in your pocket. The lawsuit claimed Apple deceived their customers when they marketed its AI system called Apple Intelligence with the iPhone 16 in 2024. It said Apple Intelligence and enhanced Siri did not exist when the iPhone 16 came out. The settlement covers all models of iPhone 16 and certain iPhone 15 models. If approved by a judge, anyone in the United States who bought the eligible devices could get a $25 payout, possibly up to $95. Apple does not admit any wrongdoing in the settlement.